Good evening, everybody. Andy Pedraza here at Special Effects Academy on the start of the week session for December 16th of 2018 on the Forex Trading Room. Thanks for joining us. We'll have our usual agenda. We're going to be looking at the prior week, our currency strength meter, fundamental announcements for this week to come, major pairs analysis, some setups in progress, the way I see them, and a few parting words. That being said, we'll jump straight into the long-term ledger for the results of the week. We had a pretty good week on the long term. The expected pound weakness finally came through on all these Brexit scenarios in the UK and Europe. So we picked up quite a nice uptick. We made about 5% for the week on that account. We did come off quite a few weeks of negative of drawdown on that account. So you can see the a huge uptick on the account balance, but it was a really, really nice recovery week. We had our deepest win was 150 pips on a half lot position, and that was not even the single one above 100 pips. We had three that exceeded the 100 pips, and well, as I said, it gave us a pretty nice uptick for the week. On the short-term account, not as good. A pretty flat week. We were down about 60 pips for the week. We did have 4 losing trades against 3, but like I said, all in all, pretty flat. A drawdown of 2.5% on that account for the week. We are going to be moving into a strictly scalping approach on the short-term account for the remaining week of active trading, and I'll get to that in later slides as well. Notes and opportunities for improvement. As I mentioned, a pretty nice uptick on the long-term balance thanks to Brexit, where the expected scenario finally played out. And I do expect more to come, but that may not happen in the remainder of this calendar year. It looks like the UK parliamentary is moving into a little bit of a quiet period for the holidays, so I'm not sure that anything much is going to happen. We'll keep an eye on it, of course, but probably a bigger movement on the pound should be expected for early next year when everybody comes back from the holidays and this takes front and center once again. On the short term, as I said, a pretty flat week, nothing major, a small drawdown, but nothing out of the ordinary. And we are entering our last week of active trading for the calendar year. So I will be trading this week, live sessions as normal. And that will be it for me this year. I will still be trading the following weeks. I'll just not have a live session. So we're going into the holidays. So, you know, spend some time with your friends and families, get ready for the end of the year, and movement, volatility in the Forex market is typically pretty dead for the final weeks. It does give you some pretty good scalping opportunities, but I wouldn't be expecting any big move for the remainder of the calendar year. Last but not least, no trades remaining open on the short-term account, and for that matter, on the long-term account either. We are all cash right now as we start the week. Okay, looking at the relative strength meter for this week that just ended and the week prior, we can see that as expected, the Aussie the prior week had a pretty bad performance. It dropped against everybody else. This week, it had a recovery against everybody except the dollar. So it does continue to play out what I'd said of a down week, an up week, a down week, an up week. So we'll continue to be looking for that, though. As I said, these are remaining weeks of the year might not offer the same opportunities on the short term or the long term that we would be looking for. The Canadian is doing a bit of a recovery against everybody except the dollar and the Aussie. The Swiss is pretty middle of the pack, though it did do a pretty good move on Friday, which we took advantage of on the short-term account. The euro was near the bottom of the pack. It did appreciate against the Kiwi and the pound alone. Everybody else outperformed the euro. But the pound, of course, the big loser for the week as all the Brexit worries came home to roost. So the pound lost ground against everybody and lost ground deeply. JPY, middle of the pack, won some, lost some. The Kiwi gave ground uncharacteristically because it had come off a pretty bad week. So this is 2 bad weeks in a row for the Kiwi. Unlike the Aussie that is doing that up, down, up, down, up, down, the Kiwi this time broke pattern and had 2 bad weeks in a row. The dollar, the clear winner for the week and quite deeply, it gained ground on everybody else. And you can see that darker blue color on the dollar column, meaning that the volatility was near the top for the week. And volatility wasn't that high anyway. It was a little bit above 1%, but still the dollar was the clear winner for the week. And then we have bullion. Silver was good for the week against everybody except the dollar. And gold did not have a good week. It lost ground against everybody except the pound and the New Zealand. Moving on to our fundamentals for the week. And we actually have a pretty busy calendar. We've got interest rate decisions coming out of the US, out of Japan, and out of Great Britain. These will be the last interest rate decisions for the year. I'm particularly interested in the Fed because they did promise a certain number of interest rate hikes this year, and they're missing one. So this is the last opportunity for them to raise the interest rate, which they promised. And the economy's not looking as good as it was looking earlier in the year. So they're going to have a pretty tough decision this week to see if they do come through with their commitment to raise it, or they back off and follow what is pretty much the president's approach, who does not want any further interest rate hikes for the year, and indeed doesn't want any further interest rate hikes for the foreseeable future. So you've got that fight playing out, and of course, the last opportunity for them to do this year. So it will be an interesting fundamental on Wednesday. We will be trading it live, of course. That'll go into the calendar. And on that same day, on Wednesday the 19th, we do have the interest rate decision out of Japan. We will be trading that one live as well. We'll piggyback that off our regular 8 p.m. session for that day. It's going to be at 9 p.m. Now, the Japanese have messed with us in pretty much all the prior interest rate decisions where they missed the expected hour. So take that with a grain of salt. If they don't release it at the hour that is supposed to be released, I'm going to call it a night, and simply we're done with that. I don't expect them to change the interest rate, and they've been a little bit uncharacteristically late, at least the past 3 or 4 times. So this will be, well, we'll see what they do this time around. But anyway, if it doesn't come out at 9 p.m. on Wednesday, I'm pretty much done with that fundy. We'll just let it play out on its own. And on Thursday, we have the final interest rate decision coming out of the Bank of England. Obviously, a very interesting one, given all the Brexit scenarios that were playing out. Last vote was unanimous to not change the interest rate. So likely there will be no change this time around either, but it'll still be a good exercise as a fundamental. So we will be trading that one live as well. It's early in the morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 4 a.m. Pacific. So take that into account, but it will be in the calendar. Okay, with that, we will move on to our charts, our daily charts for the major pairs. Euro dollar, and I'm not going to spend too much time on these. Again, not looking for any entries or direction for the remainder of the year. We're going to go into more of a scalping mode as for this final week, besides the fundamentals that will be on the calendar. But just an analysis on the euro dollar, you can see that it's very near support at the bottom of the screen, and it has been trading underneath the Ichimoku cloud. So it's sort of in a wedge right there between the cloud and the support at the bottom. We would be waiting for a break of that wedge to trade it for any long distances, and that might not play out this year. Moving on to our pound dollar, there is no technicals that apply to the pound dollar right now. it's caught in a fundamental cycle with all the Brexit news. But on the technical side, of course, it has broken through support at the bottom. So technically, it's now in free fall. But again, it will be whatever happens with Brexit that is going to be moving this pair. So definitely be careful with the pound pairs. They're not going to be following the technicals until all the Brexit scenarios play out. USD JPY continues also in a wedge, very much at the top of its range, between that downward trend coming from the very top and the Ichimoku cloud acting as support underneath price action. So that's another one where we're waiting for that wedge to finish, to play out and break on either side before we look for a long-term direction on the USD JPY. USD CAD, another one that's caught in fundamentals as oil price continues to crash. It made a new high, so we have a new high on the chart in the visible portion that started around March of this year. So we've got a new high by about, I'm going to say, less than 100 pips from the prior high, and it's now trading back at the level of resistance that prior high back in June determined. So it will move based on oil prices. At some point, oil will come back. There will be a rise of oil price, and that may not happen this year. But when it comes, this one should start moving back down. Other than that, it's going to either stay there at the top or even rise higher, depending on what happens to the US dollar, as well as what happens to oil price if it continues dropping in the near future. USD Swiss, this is another pair where we took some nice bit of profit late in the week on a quick scalp as we saw it bounce off of support. So it did bounce off of the Ichimoku cloud. It's now playing out between the cloud and that parity level where it likes to find support resistance, more resistance than support. So still below 1 and pretty much waiting for something to make it take a trip down. This pair likes to move in a sideways channel, and it's been very much at the top since October. So we're waiting on the next break of that pattern. You can see just from the past that it does like to stay there at the top for quite a while before making a quick trip down and then making another trip up, spending time at the top, and repeat. So we're waiting on that break. Again, not sure that it'll come this year, but it is what it is. The Ichimoku cloud is still extremely bullish and getting more bullish towards the future. So we'll see how that plays out. Aussie dollar, it had a bit of a recovery that has failed. It's now testing the Ichimoku cloud as support, and we'll have to see what it does for the remainder of the year. But indeed, it could go lower than its prior low. It's obviously that a bit of a recovery did fail, and it didn't it didn't follow its pattern. It is now trying to head back towards the bottom. So we'll have to see what it does in this week. Keeping a close eye on it. But as of right now, I wouldn't be too hopeful that this recovery is going to be sustained. Kiwi dollar, same thing. It has broken through its trend line. It's not looking as bad as the Aussie dollar right now. It's still very much towards the top with a rising kumo or rising cloud on the Ichimoku. So this one might be finding better support and might not visit the bottom. Obviously, price is going to do whatever it wants to do. The market is its own boss. But this one is looking a little bit better than the Aussie dollar for whatever that's worth. Aussie Canadian, this is another one where we took some pips last week on a quick, actually, I think we gave up about 20 pips on a quick scalp that didn't play out. Yeah. This one, we lost ground on Friday. That this is the Friday candle you're seeing there at the end. So this was, I think, our one scalp that didn't work out towards the end of the week. It is also still looking nicely bullish, more thanks to the Canadian weakness than anything the Aussie is doing. So if the Canadian continues weakening, this one is probably good to continue scalping towards the top. However, bear in mind it does do retraces quite frequently. Euro Swiss, another one we traded. Sorry, we traded at some point last week. I forget whether we made money or didn't, but it is still very much trying to head towards the bottom, and not finding a whole lot of bullish news. So Swiss getting stronger against the euro. The end of the week was bullish on this pair, though, as you can see, it pretty much ended where it started out the week. So it was a neutral week, but that it got stronger, and then it gave some of that up towards the end of the week. It is still very close to the bottom, and it might make another break, especially on any European news coming out of Brexit, which, again, don't expect that to happen between now and the end of the year. Euro pound, this is a pair I'm really not trading. It's just too choppy, bearing in mind that both the euro and the pound are being affected by Brexit. In this case, the euro ended up winning, and it went up back to very near the top of its range. Didn't quite break the prior high, but it went all the way up there and then started to retrace after the parliament vote. We saw some pound strength, return to the market, which is what you see playing out here towards the very end of the week. And that's about all I can say about this one. Again, I'm not looking to trade it because there's easier pairs to trade right now. Euro JPY continues to be very sideways. It has found resistance on the Ichimoku cloud and is still bouncing off those two horizontals between 129.25 and 127.50. Opportunities to trade are there. They're going to be scalps, and you're going to have to be very careful on the entry. So definitely don't look at your daily for entries. If you're scalping, look anywhere from a 1 hour to a 4 hour. But this one is bouncing quite nicely between those two values, and you can certainly trade it for profit. Euro Canadian, another sideways pair, especially since the euro and the CAD are weakening both at the same time. So also not a good one to trade. However, if you're scalping, anything is good to trade. So I'll be keeping an eye on all the pairs, looking for trigger entries, but this one is probably not going to be the best one for that. But anyway, we'll take a look at that as the week progresses. Pound JPY, the yen has staged a nice strength play against the pound for obvious reasons, as Brexit fears continue to drive money out of the UK and into Japan. We see it trying to head down towards the bottom of this chart. It's still off by about, I'm going to say 200 to 300 pips from the very bottom. Very nicely tradable, very far away from that Ichimoku cloud. So it's definitely in a bear pattern right now. And I'll be taking a look to see if we trade any pound pairs, depending on how they're moving. But you've got to be extremely careful with the pound. It's very news driven right now. So I'll be playing the news more than I'm playing the charts when it comes to the pound pairs. Aussie JPY still looks like an EKG of a heart attack victim. So again, this is probably not the pair to be trading. It's going in both directions without rhyme or reason. So we'll keep looking at it, but I'm not going to be trading it unless something happens that that makes me want to give it a shot. So for now, it's on pause. Euro New Zealand has not gone back towards the bottom. So Euro New Zealand was one where we made quite a nice chunk of money in the past few weeks. It has bottomed out. It's done its retraces, retrace to retrace, and it's just playing sideways right now. I'm still bearish on this one. I think it's going to go even deeper, but that may not play out for the remainder of the year. So I'll keep an eye on it, but it's not on my top priorities. Pound Canadian also sideways for obvious reasons. Pound getting weaker, CAD getting weaker at the same time. So this pair is not moving beyond its range. So another one that is not going to be top of my list. And last but not least, the pound Swiss, which was probably our big winner for last week on the pound pairs, traded solely on the fundamentals towards the beginning of the week when the crisis just hit its breaking point. So we made a nice chunk of pips on this one. I would expect it to either hang out sideways or continue trending lower. The Swiss is gaining strength, especially against the pound. So this one might give us better opportunities to trade in the coming weeks than the other pound pairs. Worth keeping an eye on it, but never forget that it will be the news cycle that drives this one more than any technicals. And that's the end of my charts. The setups in progress that I see for this week, as mentioned, the dollar has that final interest rate decision happening this week, and we are in the middle of a stock market correction in the U.S. All the indices, the NYSE, the NASDAQ, the S&P, they're all down by more than 1%, actually more than 2 percentage points for the week that just ended. And certainly there have been more down weeks before, so we're in what's officially a correction and may turn into a rout. Not sure if by the end of the year or it will continue, but certainly nobody is expecting any sort of stock market recovery for the remainder of the year. I've been paying close attention to all the talking heads, and everybody's either bearish or neutral on the market right now. There will be no recovery this year. Anything of that nature will have to wait for January. So for now, stock market will continue trending lower, my opinion. And of course, we're going to have to wait on the interest rate decision for the dollar, and that will be coming out on Wednesday, and it will be traded live. The euro. Euro is going to be a very nice currency to scalp for the remainder of the year. So keep an eye on those euro pairs and look for triggers for entries, trying to take anywhere from 50 to 100 pips at a time. That's probably going to be your best bet as the year winds down. The pound pairs, Brexit will continue to be the news and what drives the pound, but I don't expect much of that to happen for the remainder of the year. And we do have that final interest rate decision out of the Bank of England that will be happening on Thursday. The yen, same thing. It has the final interest rate decision for the year happening on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. If the Japanese ever follow a schedule again, they've been pretty bad for the last few months on getting that to come out on time. Last but not least, the CAD. The CAD continues to unwind. It continues to weaken, and that is primarily based on dropping oil prices. Eventually, that's going to change. You don't know when, but oil is cyclical. It will come back. And when it comes back, the CAD is going to get very strong very quickly. So you guys got to be paying attention to that, because the CAD will be a good money maker when that actually starts happening. No idea when, just got to keep an eye open for it. Last but not least, my final thoughts. As I mentioned before, we're going to take a brief rest from, or at least I am. I'll let Callum speak for himself, but I'm going to be taking a brief rest from the Trading Live after this week. So my last session for the year will be, my last live session will be on Friday, the 3 p.m. for the end of the week. And after that, I will take a hiatus till January. I will recommence the live sessions for the second week of the new year. So January 6th will be my next live session for the weekly open for that week. And last but not least, want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, and best wishes for a great 2019. And that's going to be it for me today. The schedule for this week, same as always. I'll be doing my 8 p.m. trading live Eastern time, and then I will have the fundamental sessions for the dollar, the interest rate decision, Japanese interest rate decision, and the Bank of England interest rate decision. There will be 3 fundamental trading events for this final week of live trading for me. Comments, questions, anyone? Callum, you want to share your plans for the rest of the year?
Yeah, surely will. Well, I'm going to be trading for the rest of the week, and I shall go again on the 27th. So the only days off I'll have are the 25th and the 26th, just to see if we can get a nice entry into something. Sometimes you get a nice entry on between the 27th and New Year. So it may be nothing at all, or we may get a nice entry into something. I don't think we'll actually make many pips or anything during that week, but we might just get an early head start into something. Just quickly, over last week, we had an early win, and then that was followed by 3 losses. So we lost 154 pips, which amounted to $51, and that was a 1.41% account change. So it's nothing unusual. It's what, you have an up week and then a down week, up week, then down week, or maybe 2 up weeks. We just take it as it comes, and we'll see if we can get that back this week. So we'll see what's going on. So I look forward to seeing you all on the London Open, if you can make it.
Thank you so much, Callum. Much appreciated. And I do want to clarify, what I'm stopping are my live sessions. I will probably be trading as will you, Callum. So I'll still be looking at the markets. I just won't have the live sessions until next year. But the trades will be going into the copy trader as usual. So if I trade anything, you guys will see it after this week. Alrighty. Anybody have anything else? Okay, then thank you very much. That's a wrap, and I will see you on Callum's London Open session or my session tomorrow. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers, Eric. Ta-da.